So, quick question for you. What do you think is the single most manufactured object in all of human history? It's not a screw, it's not a nail, not even a brick. Nope, it's a tiny, unbelievably small switch that powers, well, everything in our digital lives. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that switch, the MOSFET. I mean, just think about your phone for a second. It's got all your photos, your music, your chats, your connection to basically all human knowledge. It is a literal universe of data. How is it even possible to cram all of that into something you can just slide into your pocket? Well, the answer, when you get right down to it, is actually kind of simple. It all boils down to being able to control the flow of electricity with a ridiculously efficient, ridiculously tiny switch. Billions, and I mean billions of them. To really get a grip on this, you have to realize that every single thing your computer does, every calculation, every pixel it puts on your screen, every byte of data it saves, it's all just a massive, complex dance of switches. They're either on or they're off. That's it. That's the ones and zeros of our entire digital world. And the little device that makes all of this possible? It's called a transistor. So what is a transistor really? Well, at its heart, it's a voltage-controlled gate. The best way to think about it is like a faucet. You've got water coming in one side, a place for it to go out the other, and that handle on top. It takes almost no effort to turn the handle, right? But that tiny action controls a much bigger flow of water. A transistor does the exact same thing, just with electricity. A tiny little voltage at one point controls a huge flow of current between the other two. Okay, so there are different kinds of transistors out there, but let's be real, the undisputed king of the digital age is the MOSFET. Now, the name sounds super complicated, I get it, but it's actually a perfect description of what it is, so let's just decode it. MOSFET stands for Metal Oxide Semiconductor Field Effect Transistor. Yeah, I know it's a mouthful, but those first three words, metal oxide semiconductor, that's the key. They tell you exactly how it's built, which is precisely what gives it these incredible powers, like switching on and off at lightning speed and having a super high input resistance. That basically just means it takes almost zero energy to flip the switch. It's just insanely efficient. All right, first up, M for metal. This is the gate, the control terminal. In our faucet analogy, this is the handle you turn. Applying a voltage right here is what makes the decision, does current flow or not? And, a little fun fact, even though we call it metal, in most modern chips, it's actually made of something called polysilicon. The name is just a little historical leftover from the very first ones, but hey, it stuck. Next up is O for oxide. Okay, now this is the secret sauce. Right underneath that gate is a super, super thin layer of silicon dioxide, which is pretty much just glass. It's an insulator. And this is absolutely crucial because it separates the handle from the water pipe, electrically speaking. It's the reason the MOSFET is so ridiculously efficient. Almost no current can leak into the control part. And finally, we have S for semiconductor. This is the main body of the whole thing, usually made of good old silicon. This is the pipe itself, where the water, or, our electric current, is waiting to flow from a source to a drain, but it can only make that journey when the gate gives it the green light. Metal, oxide, semiconductor. See? It's literally a description of the layers. That's the stack that totally changed the world. Okay, so we know what it's made of, but how does this little gatekeeper actually work? How does it turn on and off? Well, it turns out it depends on which of the two main flavors of MOSFET we're talking about. You've got two main philosophies here. On one hand, you have enhancement mode. Think of this like your kitchen faucet. It's normally off. You have to actively apply a voltage, turn the handle, to create a path for the current to flow. Then you have depletion mode. This is more like an old farm spigot that's just always running. The path for current is already there, and you have to apply a voltage to pinch it off and stop the flow. For the digital stuff in our computers, we almost always use the normally off kind. So let's just walk through turning on one of those enhancement types. At first, with absolutely zero voltage on the gate, there's no path. Nothing. The switch is totally off. But then you apply a voltage to that gate that's just a little bit higher than its specific threshold voltage. When you do that, the electric field it creates does something that feels like magic. It pulls electrons into place, forming a brand new conductive channel right under that oxide layer. And boom, the gate is open, current flows, your switch is on. It's just such an elegant and beautiful mechanism. Now, that's the beautiful, perfect textbook version. A switch that's either perfectly on or perfectly off. But as any engineer will tell you, the real world is a whole lot messier. That perfect switch, yeah, it doesn't really exist. And this quote from our source material just nails it. The simple, ideal models we use to understand how these things work are great, but they're just that, models. In the real world, engineers have to fight against all sorts of bizarre and annoying physical effects. Let's go back to our faucet. Imagine the difference between a perfect faucet in a diagram and a real one that, drips. Ideally, when the MOSFET is off, zero current flows. But in reality, there's always this tiny little drip of current called subthreshold conduction. That tiny leak, multiplied by billions of transistors, is a huge reason your phone's battery dies even when you're not using it. We also assume that oxide insulator is a perfect wall. But when you shrink it down to just a few atoms thick, quantum mechanics says, hold my beer, and electrons can literally just tunnel right through it. And finally, these things wear out. High-energy hot electrons can slam into the structure and cause physical damage over time, slowly degrading the performance until the chip eventually fails. But look, despite all these crazy challenges, the story of the MOSFET is a story of just relentless, unstoppable miniaturization and innovation. And its impact on our world is almost impossible to fully comprehend. We all think of them as the brains in our computers, and they are, of course, but they are literally everywhere. They're amplifying signals in our radios, they're managing power in everything from your phone charger to the entire electric grid, they're the little controllers running all the complex systems in your car. There are even special, beefed-up, radiation-hardened versions that are running satellites and spacecraft way out in deep space. And this is the part that just absolutely blows my mind. That critical part, that oxide insulating layer, in a modern chip, it's now only about 15 angstroms thick. To put that into perspective for you, a single layer of silicon atoms is about 3 angstroms thick. So we are building structures that are literally just 5 atoms across. We are pushing up against the absolute fundamental limits of physics. So what does this all mean? It means this incredible, tiny switch has completely defined the last 60 years of human progress. But those laws of physics are starting to set some very hard limits. As we get down to the size of a single atom, those leaky faucet problems get worse and worse, threatening the very idea of Moore's law that has driven us this far. So the real question, the one that's going to define the next generation of technology, is what kind of switch comes next?